In the vast and rugged landscape of Western Australia, amidst endless horizons and golden fields of wheat, an unlikely war broke out in 1932. Not a war waged by men against men, nor one fought for territory or power. This was a war between humans and nature, more specifically between the Australian government and a flightless bird. Known today as the Great Emu War, this bizarre conflict stands as one of history's most curious military engagements. What began as a government response to a bird invasion quickly turned into a public spectacle marked by humor, frustration, and ultimately, futility. This isn't just a tale about emus outrunning bullets. It's a story of the unexpected consequences of ecological imbalance, the limits of military power, and how even the most meticulously planned strategies can be humbled by nature. Join us on a detailed journey through this strange chapter in Australian history, as we dissect the build-up, the battles, the aftermath, and the enduring legacy of the Great Emu War. Seeds of a crisis. The origins of the Emu War can be traced back to World War I. When the war ended, Australia faced the task of reintegrating thousands of returning soldiers. In an effort to reward their service and stimulate agriculture, the government implemented a scheme offering veterans land in Western Australia's Wheatbelt region. Many of these soldiers, unfamiliar with farming, were granted plots of land in marginal areas that required immense labor to cultivate. The soldiers did their best to adapt, but the years following World War I were economically unstable. By the early 1930s, the Great Depression had hit, further compounding the hardship. Wheat prices plummeted, and farmers found themselves working harder for dwindling returns. And then, as if poverty and poor soil weren't enough, a new challenge arrived. One with feathers, long legs, and an insatiable appetite. Emus. Native to Australia, emus are large, flightless birds that can reach over 6 feet tall. During their annual migration, they traverse the countryside in massive numbers. In 1932, their migration path intersected with the newly settled farmland. Drawn by the promise of food and water, more than 20,000 emus descended upon the Wheatbelt region, trampling fences and decimating crops with machine-like efficiency. What began as a nuisance quickly became an agricultural nightmare. The soldier-settler scheme and post-World War I agriculture. The idea behind the soldier-settler scheme was noble. Give war heroes a chance at a new life by transforming them into farmers. But in practice, many of these men were woefully unprepared for agricultural life. Most had no experience with the land or its demands. The soil in the wheat belt was poor and often unyielding, and essential infrastructure was lacking. Despite the odds, these men persevered. They built homes, cleared land, and sowed wheat with a patriotic resolve. However, they were also left to their own devices, with little governmental support or agricultural guidance. When the Great Depression struck, it wiped out many farmers' savings and dried up global demand for wheat. It was into this fragile ecosystem that the emus arrived at the worst possible time. The ecology of emus and migration patterns. Emus are uniquely Australian. Nomadic by nature, they follow rainfall patterns in search of food. This year's migration was particularly aggressive due to drought in the interior. When they reached the wheat belt, it was a paradise of water troughs and ripening grain. Fences were no match for these powerful birds. Not only did they consume crops, they damaged infrastructure, breaking wires, trampling seedlings, and leaving chaos in their wake. Farmers tried scarecrows, traps, and even hunting parties. Nothing worked. It became clear this was not just a nuisance. It was an invasion. The first reports and farmer appeals. Desperate and overwhelmed, farmers turned to their government for help. Letters flooded into state and federal offices. They requested military intervention, not because they wanted war, but because they needed assistance from the only institution with enough firepower to handle the onslaught. One of the loudest voices came from Sir George Pearce, the Minister of Defense. He was a seasoned politician who saw a way to support rural communities and potentially win public favor. What better way to assist struggling veterans than by deploying soldiers to help them defend their land? Pierce approved the request. Planning the war, tactics and machine guns. The plan was simple. Send a small unit of soldiers armed with machine guns and a truckload of ammunition into the wheat belt. Their mission: kill as many emus as possible. Major Jeep E.W. Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery was assigned to lead the expedition. With him were 2 gunners and 2 Lewis machine guns, lightweight weapons commonly used in World War I. They were accompanied by a film crew to document the government's noble effort. By early November 1932, the war had officially begun. The first engagement, chaos in Campion. The first sighting of emus came near the town of Campion. Over 1,000 birds were spotted grazing in an open field. The soldiers positioned themselves and opened fire, but the emus had other plans. At the first burst of gunfire, the flock scattered in all directions. They ran at speeds of up to 50 kilometers per hour, dodging bullets like seasoned guerrilla fighters. Only a handful were killed. Worse still, the Lewis gun jammed. Major Meredith quickly realized this wasn't going to be easy. The emu tactics: speed, splitting, and sabotage. Over the next several days, the emus revealed a surprising level of tactical awareness. They split into smaller flocks, moved at irregular intervals, and used the terrain to their advantage. One group would act as decoys while another raided fields behind enemy lines. The soldiers, who expected to mow down birds in droves, found themselves outmaneuvered. Meredith noted that the emus each had a lookout bird. He wasn't entirely joking. Retreat and regrouping. Why the birds won round 1. After days of failed ambushes, mechanical failures, and rising public scrutiny, the soldiers pulled back. Only 300 emus have been killed out of an estimated 20,000. Thousands of rounds have been fired. The press had a field day. Headlines read, "Emus outwheat the army," and "Machine guns blasted, birds undeterred." The operation was labeled a farce. Public laughter drowned out the farmers' cries. The first round of the Emu War was over. The emus had won. The second attempt, even bigger guns and bolder birds. Not ready to accept defeat, Pierce approved a second mission. This time, soldiers would use trucks to chase the birds down. This too proved disastrous. The terrain was rough, and the trucks couldn't keep up with the agile emus. Worse, the machine guns bounced so much during the chase that accuracy became impossible. Again, hundreds of rounds were fired with minimal results. The emus remained undefeated. Public reactions, ridicule, media, and political fallout. Back in Parliament, members of the opposition mocked the military. One MP quipped that if Australia ever faced human invaders, they should send the emus to fight on their behalf. Cartoons flooded newspapers. Songs were written. The war became a national joke. Yet, beneath the humor was growing frustration. Farmers were still losing crops. The government, embarrassed, quietly ended the campaign. Impact on the farmers. Economic loss and frustration. With no military help, farmers resumed their own defense. They tried fences, scare tactics, and even offered bounties for dead emus. But the damage had been done. Thousands of acres were lost and livelihoods destroyed. Ironically, many of the soldier settlers were now fighting a second war, one for economic survival. Emus and culture, songs, cartoons, and a legacy of laughter. The Emu War left an indelible mark on Australian culture. It was lampooned in comedy sketches, folk songs, and school lessons. The idea of a modern army being bested by birds was too good to forget. But over time, the Emu War also became a symbol, a quirky reminder of nature's unpredictability and the limits of human control. Ecological lessons from the Emu War. The Emu War exposed the delicate balance between development and ecology. The farmers, through no fault of their own, had disrupted migratory paths. The emus were doing what they had always done. Modern Australia learned from this. Wildlife corridors, ecological monitoring, and humane management practices are now part of standard policy. Modern pest control and wildlife management in Australia. Today, emus are protected species. Instead of bullets, Australia uses research, conservation strategies, and population control mechanisms to manage wildlife. The mistakes of the past have shaped a more harmonious approach. The emu as a national symbol, pride or problem. Strangely, the emu is one of Australia's national emblems. It appears on the coat of arms alongside the kangaroo. This paradox isn't lost on historians. A nation that once declared war on emus also celebrates them as icons of endurance and strength. Perhaps the Emu War just confirmed what the birds already knew. They are unbeatable. Government accountability and the role of bureaucracy. The Emu War also raises questions about government overreach, poor planning, and the failure to consult experts before taking action. Historians point to the campaign as a case study in bureaucratic blunder, military might solving what was essentially a pest control problem. Lessons in military strategy from the Emu War. Tacticians and military enthusiasts have dissected the war in jest and in seriousness. It reveals the dangers of underestimating an enemy, no matter how absurd it seems. Strategy, terrain, adaptability, and local knowledge. These apply whether facing tanks or birds. The third proposal, denied and dismissed. In the years that followed, some farmers again requested military help. Their pleas were denied. The government had learned its lesson. Never again would Australia mobilize the military against birds. Comparisons. Other strange wars in history. The Emu War isn't the only oddball conflict in history. From the Pig War to the War of the Stray Dog, humans have clashed over stranger things. But few are as humorous or humbling as the Great Emu War. Why the Emu War still matters today. The Emu War endures because it teaches us something timeless. Nature cannot be bullied, and arrogance can lead to absurdity. In a world filled with serious battles, the Great Emu War offers levity, and a reminder that even the mightiest weapons are useless if pointed in the wrong direction. So, the next time someone tells you birds aren't dangerous, remind them of the emus. And ask yourself, if your country won a war with nature, who would really win? What do you think? Was the Emu War a lesson in humility, a hilarious misstep, or something deeper about the balance between man and nature? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this journey into Australia's strangest battle, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss more epic stories from history that will blow your mind and make you laugh.